Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session by Kalinga Literary Festival in association with New Books. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Indian youths take part in the UPSC exam with only one goal in mind: to work for a better future for our beloved country. But what is it like to spend a life in the service of our country as an IAS officer? Today we have the opportunity to hear from retired IAS officer Mr. Rajan Kashyap, whose memoir takes the reader on a fascinating journey with the author from a childhood spent in the infancy of free India to growing up in a former princely state to trapezing into Indian administrative service with what he terms as a childlike optimism. Mr. Rajan Kashyap, a member of the Indian Administrative Service, served the government mainly in the state of Punjab for 38 years, retiring as Chief Secretary. He studied mathematics and English literature in India and development economics from Cambridge University, UK, and had a 2 year stint as a university teacher. This book recounts his days as a district officer, as an unraveler of red tape, as head of an agricultural cooperative, and as a handler of crucial service assignments. Post retirement, he was Punjab's first Chief Information Commissioner. He now lives in Chandigarh with his wife Meena, a former professor of botany, and their two children. Mr. Kashyap will be in conversation with Mr. Vivek Atray, another former IAS officer who resigned in 2017 and is now a well known motivational speaker, author, mentor, advisor, columnist, and a visiting professor. He has given 8 TEDx talks and 5 Josh talks that have been viewed by over 5 million people on YouTube. He is the founder of Suvichar Think Tank, Vibrant Networking Forum, Playwright Foundation, and Chandigarh Literary Society. He is also the co-convener of In Touch Chandigarh and a member of the Governor's Advisory Council for Chandigarh. He teaches at Shulini University as the chair of the Yogananda Center for Theology. He has written 2 novels and 2 self-help books and writes a fortnightly column for the Hindustan Times. He inspires thousands of youngsters to adopt a cheerful, positive, and multidimensional approach to their lives. We are delighted to have these two eminent personalities with us today to share their insights and wisdoms on what it means to be an IAS officer and how to find success within. I would now request Vivek sir to kindly take this session forward.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction and welcome. And thank you to KLF for organizing this interaction with Mr. Rajan Kashyap, the author of this newly launched book, which you can see at the back as well, Beyond the Trappings of Office. First of all, sir, congratulations on the launch.
Thank you. Very nice.
Yes, sir. It's been a wonderful few days preparing, thinking about this book. And yesterday, for the information of everyone, a very eminent panel was present to launch the book in Chandigarh. Luminaries from all over Punjab and North India and other parts. And Mr. Kashyap's goodwill and popularity came to the fore. But sir, let's start right from the beginning, the early days. And before we do that, let's just go to the title of the book and maybe the cover. As you can see in the backdrop, perhaps everyone, you can see a fragment of red tape on the cover. You can see a car below with a red light. And you can also see some tennis balls on the cover. So, sir,
You can also see the tennis court.
And you can also see the
tennis court. Punjab is on one side and the tennis court, tennis balls on the other side.
The map of Punjab is there in the background. Absolutely. Yeah. So, sir, this title, Beyond the Trappings of Office, a Civil Servant's Journey in Punjab, what does it imply and entail?
Trappings can have two connotations. The obvious connotation is the emblems of authority. Like, you have some security guards, you have a Sarkari car, and you got a emblem on top of it. That red light, they have been banned incidentally now. But at one time, they were a symbol of authority. So As soon as a red light with a hooter entered the middle of the road, everyone went out as if it was an ambulance, which was a wrong thing, really. But really, these were the emblems. So an officer in the senior-most service is expected or has to have a retinue, some people to assist him, police security guards, things like that, and residences. This will, the book shows that it wasn't all that a bed of roses. Beyond that, there were many other things. The other connotation of trappings is that this is a trap for the officers who enter, because once they are there, then their lips are sealed. They cannot speak openly. They have to retain their a very quiet, sober atmosphere, not even smiling excessively, and not even mixing too much with the public. So that is also a trapping in another way. So the book shows that both these perceptions need to be got rid of as soon as we can, and how it is possible. Every officer, every individual is a human being. So the book is going beyond the trappings, it's going to the human side of the author and of the people whom he met, whether they were important, less important, VIPs or political leaders, President of India, Mother Teresa, things like that. All of them come out, and commonplace people also.
That's a great introduction, sir. This book is very well written, very detailed, very elaborate, and I think gives a great insight into the civil servant's journey. Well, let's start from the very beginning, perhaps. Early days leading up to your selection, and those very early years in the service, sir. Although we have a large canvas to cover even here, but as succinctly as possible, sir.
See, I was very lucky not to go to school. It was a compulsion. It just happened. It happened that I was working in a, I was rather, my father was working when I was very young, 4 or 5 years old. He was posted in a village. He was a police officer. He was a district superintendent of police, which is a senior enough position. But that village had no school. And we could, at age 5, they could not send me anywhere. It happened that my mother was a trained teacher. Those days they had a course called the Bachelor of Teaching. It's called B.Ed, Bachelor of Education now. So she was a trained teacher. So my parents said, all right, I and another brother of mine, a cousin really, both of us would be having education in the bungalow where we were staying. It was like a haunted house in a village. There was no electricity, there was no water connection, and you had to sleep at the sunset and get up at sunrise. So that was the time when all the education we got was from my mother. And she used us as guinea pigs, for all the things she had learned, like the Montessori system of education. I have described here the adventures that we had. Sorry, this included, having exploration in the area where the house was located, and playing with tadpoles and fishes and climbing up trees and things. But my mother made it a point to tell us to write about your experiences, tell me what you learned. Now, in that process, she must have done something right, because after 2 or 3 years, then when we were sent to school, they said that, well, they're ahead of the class. So I found myself with students who were at least 2 years older than me. Now, this head start carried me through school, college, and it happened that I did my senior Cambridge at that time at the age of 14, my intermediate at 16, BA at 18, and at 20 I'd done my master's, and I was underage for the IS just because I didn't have education. So if I had gone to a public primary school, maybe I could not have gone so far ahead. Anyway, that helped me, and end result was that when I joined the service, I was the youngest ever in the history of IS to join the service, because you needed to be 21 years on the 1st of August. I was 21 years just a day earlier. So in the history, I was the youngest. But anyway, that doesn't mean that I rose to the top and stayed there at a very long time. It just means that I served for a longer period. So that's about the unexpected consequences of not going to school.
Absolutely, sir. And this, you spoke of your mother, the parental influence. Let's also speak a little bit about your father. He was a police officer, an IPS officer, and those early days. And in fact, tomorrow happens to be Father's Day, so maybe it's in good context
Yeah.
as well.
So it was very unusual. At that time, when I was born, that was 43. And from 43 to 47, we lived in a colonial India. Now, my father belonged to the police, and he was serving the state of Kapurthala, which is a small state in northwest of India, and it was headed by a Maharaja. And they had the trappings of office, as I said at that time, because with the colonial power behind them, they were westernized and sophisticated, living in a modern town. My mother came from a village and from a family of freedom fighters. So they considered that anyone who's serving the princely state is a toady. That's a toady. So everyone said this marriage is never going to last, because one contempt for the other, and the other feeling a lot of nausea, you can say, at having to send their daughter to a British toady. So, any case, my father was a superintendent of police, highly devoted to his duty, and he never allowed us to come close to him emotionally, sentimentally. But my mother was the one who was the housekeeper and warden, or whatever, and she's the one who took care of all duties. And the father we saw from a distance. So I saw how the police functioned and how disciplined and difficult it was in those days, in a desert area, to be moving about middle of the day. Of course, as a senior officer, he had lots of advantages also, power of police. But anyway, a police officer married to a freedom fighter's daughter, and her parents had gone to jail many times. So it was a marriage of unequals. Fortunately, it worked out just because my mother and my father's mother, that means mother and mother-in-law, they had a religious inclination. So they used to travel to a spiritual center which was close to Kapurthala. So when they went there, sometimes my father worked as a chauffeur. All right, I'll take you there if you insist. But I'm not going inside because I don't like the teachings. I don't like this spiritual things. So he would sit outside. Ultimately, it happened that he was so influenced that he gave up meat, eggs, alcohol within a year of marriage. By the time I was born, he had sworn himself into vegetarianism, and all his friends shunned him because they said it's a wet blanket, now is no good for company. In any case, that was the kind of atmosphere. I'm just telling this. We'll be speaking about governance issues later, but right now, this was the background, family background of unusual combinations.
Absolutely, sir. So the early years were obviously you were impressionable, you were inspired, you were influenced, and then entering the service, those incidents from the academy, maybe an anecdote or two we can listen to during your training days. How were the early years in the service?
We thought that entering the academy was like a holiday in the hills. Missouri, salubrious mountain air, very clean, neat, and organized life. And we said that, well, it's very nice. And for some months, it was that. And and the probationers just thought that, well, it is just a kind of extended holiday before they enter the business of uh, administration. And there was some boys used to go to Delhi overnight to meet their girlfriends without without taking permission, and because the discipline was lax. Unfortunately, it was too good to be true, because at that time they posted an ICS officer whose name was Mr. Pimputkar from the Maharashtra cadre, a brilliant ICS officer who had a reputation for discipline, and he changed the culture, the entire work ethic of the probationers. So overnight, we were asked to attend every class, and the director would be sitting in a corner to see whether the teachers are behaving themselves, whether the students are there. Then he would have compulsory physical training, riding lessons, extremely tough. So there was a place called Happy Valley where all this happened. We never thought it was happy because everyone said that, well, it's onerous for us to do this. So I happen to be good, very fond of sports. So they made me a kind of a tutor for some kind of aggressive physical training, which was used for the Canadian Air Force.
I see.
So that meant, in 11 minutes you have a complete workout, and by the end of 11 minutes, half the probationers were panting and half of them would have fainted also. I had to pay for my interest in sports. But anyway, then Mr. Pimputkar ensured that there's absolute discipline, and then it became serious business. But there was good fun also, because when we were asked to see the whole of the country, since this telecast is going to all over the country. So it was called Bharat Darshan.
Yes.
The idea was that there should be national integration. And we went to Maharashtra, Gujarat, Kerala, Madras, Hyderabad. These were the original names. They didn't have the new names of Andhra Pradesh and Mysore and Karnataka and that kind of thing. So we went there, and 2 months we stayed in the railway bogie, because they didn't have rest houses everywhere. So it was a little bit of hardship, but quite enjoyable. More problems were from boredom, because you could go on traveling in long time, and in the middle of the night, you don't know where the train is going. So when they were in the academy, everyone said gambling very, very good fun thing. But when you don't infringe any rules, and you say you are free to gamble, then nobody finds it interesting. So we learned a lot there. Then we were sent for army training also, and we went for training with army units just after the war. And there we saw the difficult conditions under which our soldiers are living. This was a deliberate effort by the government to see that young IAS officers should be emotionally tied to the servicemen. And I thought it was so good that when I had my first posting, whenever a serviceman came for a little favor, can you give me 3 bags of cement? I'm here for a week's leave. I have to repair, or I want some bricks, and my uncle is bothering me in a mutation case. So I would go out of the way, what little we learned. So this was a good bonding that we had. So the training period, I feel, was a very enjoyable period at that time. We learned the ropes, we became physically fit, and were able to ready ourselves for the tasks in hand.
That's well said. So very elaborate and very well explained. Now we come to the governance facet. Early years, SDM, DC, the cutting edge of administration, even today. So speaking about district level governance and your own experiences as they were, and many of them are relevant to today. So were you successful in whatever you wanted to do at that time? as a district magistrate, or even before that as SDM? Were there challenges? Obviously, there were. Any other remembrances?
The stage at which an officer is closest to the public is as a subdivisional officer, the lowest rank, and as a district magistrate after that. They call it in Punjab deputy commissioner, in UP it's district magistrate, but it combines three functions: development and also magistracy and civil work and lots of other things everyone knows. So that was the time when you could actually help people, and it was the time when also you could get into trouble also. So if once I remember there was at that time there was a shortage. The country was short of food grains. As a consequence, there was smuggling from Punjab. Punjab had started the Green Revolution, so it had already enough wheat, but the neighboring state did not have that. So the food secretary said, "Well, please keep an eye on what's happening." So I said, in sheer bravado as SDM, so I said, let's a midnight raid. I say we went to the barrier between Punjab and Himachal Pradesh, and there we saw that there were a huge number of trucks which were laden with wheat meant to be smuggled into Himachal Pradesh. So while we were there was a leader who came, a political leader, and he started shouting and ranting and saying, "What is all this nonsense? I'll get rid of all of you." So that was very unexpected. While he was doing that, the police came, and the police, they wanted to paper it over. And the police said, "No, sir, maybe this gentleman might have some problems. I think let's see here both sides of the picture." No, then I realized that the police and the food department are in cahoots with each other, and they are part of the warfare, the gangs. And that politician who had come was one of the biggest transporters who was looking after transport of wheat. So at midnight, I went and made a report to the district magistrate that we must get rid of this, the corruption, that kind of thing. So immediately the man was transferred, sent to the headquarters. Now a very interesting thing happened after that. My father, while I was a junior officer in IAS, he was the Inspector General of Police of the neighboring state of Himachal Pradesh. So it happened that a police truck carrying just 2-3 bags of wheat for the policemen was stopped by the police of Punjab as if it was a smuggling operation. And it was not a personal, anything personal. My father happened to be in that position. But when the matter reached the district magistrate at senior levels, the police were pulled up for that. So I realized that corruption was ingrained, and you have to be very cautious. Lessons learned, no need to go and take your personal front in there. You should be able to get somebody else to do the dirty job, but at the same time it means you are avoiding. So it's a delicate balance. Similarly, when I was the district magistrate, we had an interesting situation where there was a police firing, and it seemed some nihangs. Nihangs are, odd, eccentric, turbaned Sikhs who claim that they are the progeny of Guru Gobind Singh, the last Sikh Guru. And they move about freely in the villages, and they have a different kind of vocabulary. They don't do anything for a living, but they don't go for beg. They don't beg for any arms. They demand arms as a matter of right. So you have the same picture. If someone wants to give arms and says, "Here is a 100 rupee note." I will not take. He'll not take it. Put it on the ground. He'll put his spear there. Pick it up with the spear, and he's pick it up. Now he's claimed it. Anyway, there was the police firing under the influence of drugs. They attacked the police, and the police retaliated as happened. And in the process, some of them were killed. So I was attending some marriage in Chandigarh, which was close to where I was posted. That was the district of Ropar. So I immediately rushed back, and I found that all the policemen on one side who were seriously injured, and the Nihangs who were also injured, lying side by side like, players of a football match who might have been injured. And they were very happy. I spoke to both of them, and at 2 o'clock at night, I ordered magisterial inquiry. And next thing, gradually, it became diffused. But the Chief Justice, at that time, later he became the Chief Justice, he was the judge of the High Court. He carried out an inquiry in which he says that he praised my role as district magistrate, but he blasted all the other functionaries. So I thought that when I learned that he had written something positive, so I immediately wrote to the chief secretary, said, "Sir, here is the report of the judge of the High Court. He has praised me. Please put this on my character role, so it will help me in my promotion." Now, when I wrote that, the chief secretary dismissed it. "Who the hell do you think you are?" He told the other officer. If he had approached me, I would have done it. But he can't give me in writing. So it seemed that I had learnt the habit of the Nihangs, that claim it as a matter of right and don't make a request. So the lesson learned was you should be tactful in such matters. But tact is not something you learn overnight. So lots of such things happen when you are in the district. You can help so many people because you have power and authority, things like that. One or two cases which might be of interest. There was a
About political interference also, sir, or something to do with politicians, because you come across them at that stage more, and you recall any incident with any leading personality?
I would say I can recall an incident where I was entirely at fault. And I was a brash young officer, just posted in the district, and the SDM, who was my number two, he called me for lunch. While we were having lunch, a gentleman came in, and they told me that he is the head of the Congress party of Punjab. I had never seen him. It turned out that he was no less than Gyani Zail Singh, who later on was to become the chief minister and also the president of India. Now, if I had any sense and if I had any tact, I should have cultivated the gentleman. So he had a simple demand, says, "I want you to go immediately. There's a flood situation and my villages are sinking." So I was very brash and made an enemy of a friend. So I said, "Who's he to tell me where I go?" So I tried to put it tactfully, "I'll go, sir, after I take charge, I'll get a report," that kind of thing. Now, he never forgot that slight. The lesson learned was that it's not the politician who is always to blame. Quite often it is the officer to blame also, because young, hot-headed officers, I learned the lesson, well, we've got to be a little cautious in dealing with politicians. So these kind of things always happen. But also, I think another thing was my interest in a social cause, which is donation of blood, started there.
Yes.
Because that's the time when there was a war with Pakistan. Ropar did not have to face the hostilities because it was in the hinterland. But at least 42 soldiers were killed, those who belonged to the villages. So my wife, who was in charge of the Red Cross operations, she went to each of the widows, gave them some small, contribution which the Red Cross could give. And I organized a blood donation camp. My first blood donation was there when we wanted to send hundreds of bottles for injured soldiers. So that love of blood donation carried me through life, and I must have donated about 50 times. So
Yes.
I marked my retirement by a blood donation camp and celebrated it because it was in the secretariat and I was chief secretary then. Everyone came to follow that. So I happened to carry this was an advantage, I think, because I was working in the districts. So we are very close to human beings. That is what is very important. That's why in the book I have stressed the importance of human interface. And when I talk about political leaders, I talk about their human side, not so much about their political acumen, things like that.
So, in fact, that's very interesting. And one facet you already mentioned is the blood donation. We're going to come to another facet of your personality, the sports part, in a little while. And I firmly believe, as a civil servant, we should have a multi-dimensional personality and interest, which you do exemplify. But let's just get the governance part done with. So later in your career, so you were also heading departments like rural development, science and technology. You mentioned a lot in your book. So just to highlight to the viewer, maybe a young viewer who's just learning the ropes or understanding governance, how was that perspective compared to district governance?
You see, you are at a different level when you are in the secretariat as secretary to the government. You have the responsibility for, let's say, I was local government and urban development secretary. Blue Star had taken place. We were to reconstruct the area. There was massive damage to the buildings and to businesses. So the governor called me and he said that I want within a year all this to be cleaned up, the debris to be picked up, and a corridor around the Golden Temple, so it is easy for pilgrims. So this was a tough task, but because I had some very fine engineers with me, and they worked together, and they were able to clear out with the cooperation of the Sikh, the Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, which is responsible for the Golden Temple. So it was very satisfying that we were able to clean up without any, all of them, all the persons who were uprooted were relocated, they got houses, they got businesses, and we ensured that the government didn't have to spend too much money on them. They were given bank loans and things. But the other very interesting incident that happened. One day I was sitting in my office. Who should turn up? Someone, my PA came and said, "Sir, Madam Teresa is here." I said, "What is Madam Teresa?" He meant Mother
Mother
Teresa,
Teresa.
Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And in Punjabi, they call it Madam Teresa Aagi ji. So, what does Madam Teresa means? Everyone was overawed, everyone had seen there. It was Mother Teresa. And while waiting outside my office, I jumped and went to her. I said, "Madam, what can you do? What can I do? You should have called me. I would have come and met you anywhere. It's disgraceful that you are having to wait." She said, no, she was smiling. She said, no, no matter. She was so young, so small, I had to bend down to meet her. And she said, "I have a small request. I want some land for my old people's home, orphanage in Jalandhar. Now the Improvement Trust is not allowing it." So I went through the rules. Yes, 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 I must help you. I found that I didn't have the power. The power lay with the minister or chief minister, or in this case the governor, because the president's rule. So I hatched a conspiracy with Madam, or rather Mother Teresa. So I said, "Madam, I'll get you an appointment with the governor. You tell the governor that this secretary is not helping me at all. That's why I've come to you." She had a big laugh. She said, "All right, all right." And we went there. She told the governor quite the reverse. He says, "No, the secretary is trying to help, but he says the power is not with him." So within half a minute, the work was done.
Oh,
So you see, these are the kind of incidents you realize when the human angle comes in. So you can have so much capacity to do good. I'm talking at the junior levels, at the when you are at the state level. When you're at the central level, you're a little removed from the actual action on the ground. I happen to be secretary to the governor also. So during president's rule and also during the time when there was an elected government, So I could see what is the difference in the working style during an elected government time and the president's rule. So, but it was quite an interesting phase of that time.
Yes, I think you've highlighted various aspects of governance already. There is a ticklish one which I'll combine a couple of points which I have. Transfers and postings. Politicians decide. You did not really serve in the government of India at a senior level. That may have disappointed you. You did not have a tenure as chief secretary as long as perhaps you should have had. So, what do you reflect upon? I know you mentioned it in your book, but just for the viewers'
See,
benefit.
the first time where I was deeply disappointed and had sleepless nights, I was doing my duty with great enthusiasm as sub-divisional magistrate, small town called Pathankot. And next morning, while I was in the office, a gentleman comes in, carries carrying transfer orders, says, I have to take charge from you. I said, I am holding court. Why do you need to come here? But my orders were issued almost midnight, and I was deeply upset. I said, is this the way that we are being treated by the politicians? But then my wife sobered me down. She says, well, you're not here to serve an individual politician, you have to serve the government. So they're free to send you anywhere. Then I read a little couplet in Urdu from the famous poet called Zauq, who lived during the 19th century when the mutiny took place. So he said, Lai hayat aaye, kaza le chali chale. That means life brought you into the world, death will take you away.
Uh,
The second line is the most thing which I made it my slogan for throughout my life. अपनी खुशी ना आए ना अपनी खुशी चले. So idea is you must reconcile and you are not to question why you're not to, you do what is required of you, do to you. So after that I found there were lots of vicissitudes, had lots of problems, transfers, ministers, dissatisfied, and I'm being shifted from place to place, and I was given unimportant positions. They made me the secretary for science and technology, and this is not an authoritative post. It doesn't have many perks and doesn't have any patronage. So they said it's in Punjabi they call it the Khuda line post. Khuda line post means it is a sideline post. So but I found it the most satisfying job that I had, and I can just tell you it's just because I was there that I was able to have a personal rapport with no other than Professor Abdul Kalam, who at that time was secretary, scientific advisor to the prime minister. He became president later. And he agreed to come to Punjab, and we had a long discussion and on what science and technology can be taught in schools. And he was a brilliant academician. He spent so much time with the children, and I had a close bond with me. He called me by my first name. And then when finally I appointed as chief secretary, I had the guts to go and ask him, sir, can I call on you? And imagine I and my wife were treated to 40 minutes of the president's time. It's unimaginable. So in our career, we are bound to face a lot of ups and downs. I found I should have been the senior most person and become chief secretary for about 7 years. As it is, I was there for only 3 months. Reason being that persons junior to me were appointed chief secretaries, but I had seen at that time, apni khushi na aaye, na apni khushi chale. So I said, let's take it as it comes. So I was happy when they made me chief secretary. So that was good enough. They protected my salary all along. It doesn't matter if you have been superseded. In the army, of course, if you are superseded, you either resign or you are thrown out. Here in the civil, people take it as a matter of course. So
So these are, you had a very distinguished career in 38 years. It's already running out. We're running out of time. About 5 minutes left. I want to touch upon sports because you've been a sports person. It probably helped you in your career. You balance your outlook. You win some, you lose some, and then the tennis part, which is your contribution to rural boys and girls, especially. Would you like to talk about that?
Well, I think I had a fetish for fitness. I was not scientific, not been taught by professional. I was a university level tennis player, used to play didn't play the circuit, but was reasonably good. And throughout life, I was able to play tennis. When I was in the middle of my career, some people elected me as president of the local association, that is the Chandigarh Lawn Tennis Association. And we found here is an opportunity. I said, that tennis is an elite sport, and why aren't more players excelling in the country? So because there's a very narrow base. So we decided, let's go have a larger base. So I can say that I misused my position as a senior officer in order to have a kind of a talent search. Wrote to all the deputy commissioners, get me the fittest, but the poorest children who can be taught the sport. They never touched a racket. Some of them are so poor, they have never brushed their teeth, and they have never worn shoes. So we selected those village boys and systematically built them. And this team succeeded to a remarkable extent. In 5 years' time, we were able to create a national champion from a village at the age of 16, which was a record in a game like tennis. A boy from a village who never would have seen a tennis racket. So this kind of work was possible because you have the basic infrastructure and you have the authority to do good. So as an officer, you should be able to do good and take it as a challenge. And it's a you can say a duty for you to see that your presence leads to some advantage for the public.
In fact, that is where I would take this word beyond the trappings to a very positive level. I would say that what you did was hardly misuse, it was judicious use of your authority for an aspect which helped the society. And I myself would be a votary of this for all officers. I mean, going through the motions and routine career is not really what
I
life
must
should
I
be.
must interrupt and say that Vivek and I are on parallel lines. He is doing in the world of cricket what I was trying to do in the world of
We did,
tennis,
absolutely.
because he is running a top level cricket tournament where all champions are coming. So I'm very happy when he invites me sometime. I says I don't know anything about
We played
cricket.
together, sir.
We only meet as rivals because we are playing for the Haryana Governors team. He's playing for them, and I'm the captain of the Punjab Governors team. It's a good festival match. But I find that, as Vivek has said, it's a great opportunity of persons who are in authority can use their authority for practical purposes. Like for blood banking, I was able to arrange so much supply of blood by asking the district magistrates, please hold a camp. There's patients dying over here, and we want 100 bottles of blood. And overnight, the blood van would go there and they'll have their 100. Now, this is the kind of thing, which I'm sure for different parts of the country, different officers, different leaders would have different challenges. And I'm sure this is reaching a large number of people. I can only speak about my experience in our own state, where I think I was able to adjust to the reality. And I thought it was very satisfying to be able to work both within government and also outside government.
Well said, sir. Very well said. I have two rapid fire questions for you to close. Just pithy answers, as you said. Firstly, what would you have wanted to be were you not a civil servant? I know the answer, but want to hear it from you.
You see, I do not have the kind of guts which my friend Vivek has.
Absolutely.
He decided in the middle of his career when he was at the peak, he decided to chucked the service, resigned, and went to a vocation. You have seen the wonderful accolades that the introducer has given. I developed a soft underbelly, as they say. If I had resigned after 3 or 4 years, maybe I would have gone into teaching. I was already a teacher, but that time I was flush with the enthusiasm of serving the country and in administration. So by the time I was in the middle level, then I said, no. As officers become higher, I don't think I belong in that category. I always say that there is a backbone in every officer, but that backbone becomes weaker and weaker as the officer becomes more senior. So you have to have guts really to give up. And I think Vivek took a great risk, but it has paid off. But anyway, I thought I was in a different trajectory, and I managed to stay the course and do my 38 years and more in the service.
No, congratulations, sir, and congratulations once again on the book. We can just
Thank you.
Also, who should read your book, sir? What kind of reader do you think would love it most?
Well, I have a simple answer which will probably shock most of you. I think that if children read the book and understand it, I think I have succeeded in communication. I have to put complex ideas, complex situations in simple language. And if I can advise children on financial management, on economic matters, on police and judiciary and things like that, in language and in stories and in adventures, that will appeal to them. I feel that children are at heart critics, and they are very neutral critics. They are not affected unduly by other influences. So, if this book is read by children, they can understand it, and it is simple enough for everyone to read. I think I would have achieved a goal of good communication.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful conversation, great answers, and I think we covered the entire gamut of your book.
It was a pleasure to be here, and
Pleasure,
I
sir.
hope that this would be relevant to people in other states also. It's just I can speak only about my experiences, but perhaps it may ring a bell or strike a chord with people all over the country.
Thank you. You're on mute.
On behalf of Kalinga Literary Festival and Yogi Books, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our distinguished speakers for sharing their valuable time and their insights with us. I'm sure the audience members are as excited to read the book as I am. I'd also like to thank all the participants for joining us today and making this event a success. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.